What's going on, guys? Welcome to a mini workshop that I wanted to put on for you all tonight. Whether you're an active member, whether you are doing some nutrition coaching with me, or whether you're just here for the brain gains that you like to ensue, you guys know I love to teach this stuff, and I hope that you guys like to learn it. So let's go ahead, run through a little bit of nice about nutrition. So this might be new to you. This might be what you already know, but I think there's something that everybody might get out of this, as well as a supplemental guide that I'll drop in the comments below. So what's up? My name is Rachel, and I'm on a mission to bring confidence to women's lives. And I went to Radford University. If some of you didn't already know that, I'm a ACE certified personal trainer. What's up? And I'm a Precision 1 level 1 candidate. That just means I need to hurry up and finish my course. I've got a few chapters left, and it's hard to believe, but I've been in the fitness industry for like 6+ years, and I'm hard to believe because I'm like a little baby. But let's go. Let's hop into it. So what are we doing here? We're going over energy and what that even means. We're going to go over TDEE plus NEAT, maintenance calories, macros 101, and also building your personal macronutrients. So energy is just the ability for us to do work, right? Like we hear calories all the time, but the word calories and energy are just synonymous. Like they mean the same thing. So we know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's only transferred. So when we are on a fat loss phase and we want to shrink our bodies a little bit or get a little bit bigger, all that's changing is the size of our fat storage or our muscle storage or our glycogen storage, right? Energy is just stored, fat tissue or muscle tissue. So the example here is looking at a nutrition label, which is super important, right? Like anything we eat or consume has this lovely label on it. Underneath it's going to tell you what makes up whatever you're about to eat. So this example is soup. It's 150 calories. So we use calories to measure our energy. It's no different than joules or watts or anything like that. We use calories. That's what our body utilizes on a daily basis. So from this, you would get 150 calories towards your daily energy expenditure. Think of calories as like a paycheck, right? Like that's going to go into your bank and you're either going to spend it on working out or it's going to go into storage. It's the same way as like money coming in and money coming out of your bank account. So TDEE is our total daily energy expenditure. It's a combination of our BMR and everything else we do, right? So for example, I think my BMR is around like 1500 or something like that. So that's just to keep me at my weight if I just were to like lay in bed all day. Like if I did nothing else, to just laid in bed, I would still need 1500 calories to maintain my current weight of like 140 pounds. So when you use a macro calculator, typically they're going to have something that looks like this low, moderate, or high. And that is just a culmination of like, what do you actually need, right? So if most of us are honestly low, right? Like a lot of people in the old panty are working at home mostly. They work out, yeah. But if your step count is like 4,000 to 5,000 a day, like honestly, your energy expenditure is pretty low. Like if you're sitting at your desk most of the time, you don't need all these extra calories just because you're not doing as much. Now, on the flip side, like a college student who's walking around all day, doing all the things, their energy expenditure is higher, right? Because they're expending all this energy to walk from this side of campus all the way to the other. Or like teachers is a really good example too. Before the pandemic, they were up, walking around, walking the halls, telling people, get to class and doing all the things. Now we're doing everything over Zoom. So that's really going to change a lot of that. That's why we saw a lot of that like pandemic weight gain. Like, yeah, everyone was sitting at home, but in addition to that, like our energy just changed a ton. It hit in February, March, and that it's cold outside. So all of that, just kind of get your mind working in that regard, right? That's why in the summertime, people are moving more out and doing the most. The sun shines out, the days are longer. It just makes you want to move more on a biological standpoint. So you see, I'm mentioning a little bit of BMR there. So our NEAT is our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that's just a long, fancy acronym for saying anything that we do that isn't inside the gym. So if you're fidgeting a lot, if you walk really far during the day, like anything that isn't like lifting a weight and making your skeletal muscle system work, that is going to be your non-exercise movement. As you can see, 10 to 15% doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually is when it comes to fat loss, right? So if you're somebody who sat at their desk all day and still worked out, right? Maybe you did an hour and a half of like hard strength training. you would still have a lower overall caloric balance that you would be needing because your NEAT is so low, right? So you could be the same body weight, same body type, about the same muscle mass, and then the next person could do the same as you, but maybe they work construction. So they're going to need a lot more calories during the day than this person who, their job just got moved to remote and they're on Zoom all day. So if we're looking at this fun little graph over here that I adapted from a study going over what, expends our calories on a daily basis, RMR is a combination of things that we can and cannot change. And we're going to get to that in the next slide. So that's going to make up a good chunk of what we're expending on a daily basis. Diet-induced thermogenesis is a small amount. Eat high protein is what that means. You ever heard of the meat sweats? It's real. The meat sweats is just like your body being like, oh my gosh, I got to digest this big old chunk of meat here. So PEEP is physical activity related energy expenditure. That includes exercise and non-exercise movement. And as you can see, that's a good portion of what we're expending on a daily basis. And this also is going to affect this, because then we're getting into muscle mass and fat mass. And that is where strength training is going to come into play. So with that being said, ways to increase NEAT. Take the stairs, stand at your desk, wash your dishes instead of putting in the dishwasher, park as far away as possible. Seriously, like just quit parking close, and your car's less likely to get hit because no one's parking out there, So fidget, be that ADHD person, and chew gum. So your RMR, or BMR rather, is your basal metabolic rate. So I spoke just a few minutes ago about if I laid in bed all day, I would still need about 1,500 calories to keep me at my weight. So this is what is affected by a lot of different things. How much fat mass we have on our bodies, muscle mass, height, weight, age, gender. So some of these things we can change, some of these we can't. Gender, age, height, but our weight, fat mass, and muscle mass can change. So if you hear somebody saying like, oh, my metabolism's shit, like I just, it's not what it used to be. That is true, right? As we age, it gets slower, but that is what makes it even more important to strength train, eat high protein, things that we should be doing when we're 22, we should be doing when we're 60. It doesn't change in regards to what we're doing. When we're 22, I can just eat a little bit more because I'm moving more and all the things like that. My hormones are different. But for the most part, if we're looking at this picture here, the fat tissue weighs the same amount as muscle, right? But like, look how much more space the fat takes up in comparison to this muscle here. But the difference is the viscosity of these two, right? So the muscle is very dense. Like that's going to require a lot of energy. So if we go back to our BMR, this lovely BMR guy, when we strength train, that BMR is going to go up because the more muscle mass we have, the more calories we need on a daily basis just to keep ourselves alive and running, because this muscle tissue guy is just so thick. Like he needs a lot there. He needs nutrients. He's getting, when we work out, that's cellular damage. So we got to repair those muscles, doing all these things to repair, recover, hormones are getting released on a better basis. When we have more fat, it's just harder for everyone to do their job, right? He just kind of gets in the way. Obviously, it's normal to have a certain healthy amount of that fat mass, but that's the biggest difference between fat and muscle in regards to a tissue or microcellular standpoint, is just kind of like what these two look like when they all come together. So when we talk about our maintenance calories, that's pretty much like the meat of everything else that we want to do moving forward. Like if you need to put some muscle on, we need to know our maintenance calories. If you want to lose fat, we need to know our maintenance calories. So I've talked a lot about a lot of different things in the previous slides about, muscle mass and BMR and what affects this. So maintenance calories, a lot of things affect it. Gender, age, things we can't change, things that we can change. Daily movement and exercise, body fat percentage, muscle mass. These three are kind of like, that cascade effect. One is going to affect the other, which affects the other. Typically, when we increase our muscle mass, our body mass typically goes down. That's what we would consider body recomposition. Our daily movement and exercise, as both of those go up, our body fat percentage will go down. Typically, muscle mass will go up if you're on a correct progressive overload program that, you know what you're doing. You're pushing yourself every time you're in the gym. You're doing the same exercises for about 4 to 5 weeks. All that good stuff that I talk about all the time. on my gram. So let me just move myself over here. If we want to lose fat, so say our maintenance calories are, 2,000, very easy. So we're going to subtract 300 to 500 because, 3,500 is about a pound of fat. So if we're in a 500 calorie deficit each day, 7 days a week, at the end of the week, that's going to be a 3,500 deficit, right? So carb cycling, keto diets, tracking your macros, whatever the saying is, 6 one, half dozen the other, it's the same thing. If you want to eat, in a 600 calorie deficit, like 3 days a week, and then you only eat in a 300 calorie deficit those other days, it doesn't matter, right? Like people get caught up in this like daily basis. Like as long as at the end of the week, you're at a 3,500 deficit or 3,000, whatever, how serious you want to take it. That's what we're after, this weekly, weekly 1%. I talk about that a lot. We get to the weekly by getting to the daily. But that's how we get that 300 to 500 subtraction there. If you're doing 300 calories, it's going to be a little bit less aggressive than say 500 would be, obviously. So maybe you start with only a 200 calorie deficit, but you increase your movement. You go on a few longer walks. So you're not like starving and ravenous, but you're still doing more work and burning a little bit more energy. So body recomposition, that's when you're going to eat the same amount of calories, but you're really going to look at what you are doing. So we're going to strength train. We're going to eat at least 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein. And we're going to eat enough because we're working really hard. So a lot of my clients, a lot of my one-on-one girls, this is what we're doing. We're eating at maintenance calories. We're working really hard. It just depends on the person. And then to gain mass. So say, you just went through this great fat loss phase. You cut down, you got to a certain body weight, you got to a certain body fat percentage, and you're like, damn, kind of just looks skinny. Like I don't have those arms. I don't have that big old quad there. That's when you would go through a gaining phase. I know that sounds crazy and outlandish to think that someone would have gone a gain phase, but we need phases like that to look really good in our fat loss phase. So define your maintenance in a very simple way. If you don't want to do any calculations, you're just kind of chilling. You're like, Rachel, it's not that serious for me. Like I'm just here so I don't get fined. Track what you eat for the week, repeat it for the next week, and then see what changes occur, if any. So if you weigh yourself on Monday morning, you're going to have some type of measurement come Saturday morning, right? You're either going to be the same weight, you're going to be less, you're going to be more. So during that week, track everything you eat and drink, right? Every calorie, every energy that's coming in, not really coming out, coming in. And then do the same next week, or maybe change something. So maybe you get to the end of the week, you're like, had a few too many seltzers on Friday night. Maybe next week, I won't have that many seltzers. And then you can kind of see what happens there. You might lose a little bit of weight, lose a little bit of water weight. It takes time to lose fat, but that's a very easy way to find your maintenance calories. If your weight doesn't change, that's your maintenance. Do the same thing. So it's important with all of this nutrition is like, what do you want to do, right? Like, do you need to lose more than 10, 15 pounds? When put you in a deficit? Are you somebody that, works out really hard, but doesn't really see any type of results? You probably need a body recomposition. And a caloric surplus is, like I said, if you kind of just went through a diet phase, or maybe you're just naturally smaller and struggle to gain weight or size, that's when you do a caloric surplus phase. So let's get into a little bit of like the math and science into calculating your own personal macros. So a really easy way to figure out your maintenance calories without doing, the little bit of science experiment for you in the other slide would be this little calculation here, 14 to 16, depending on TDEE. So if we flash back to like slide 3, when I was talking about low, moderate, high. So if you're somebody that is a construction worker, you're probably on the high end. So you would get your body weight times 16. If you're somebody that's not as active, maybe you're working on Zoom most of the time, maybe it's a hybrid model, then we're going to go on 14, a little bit more conservative size, because you don't need that much energy. You're not doing that much. So for our example here, we're going to use our homie to the left. Her weight is 140 pounds, and she doesn't move that much during the day. She works out 4 times a week, does walks every single day. But we're going to multiply that by 14. So we get this total maintenance calories as 1,960 calories per day to maintain that body weight. So you can figure out our protein. As we can see here, strength training 4 times a week, 20-minute walk 6 times per week. Sweet person, stick figure. If I were her coach, I would increase that to like a 30-minute walk 6 times per week. Just get some extra. Summer's coming, all the things. protein's super easy. Whatever you weigh, eat that in grams protein. So that's because we're strength training, right? And we know that protein is super beneficial in regards to muscle protein synthesis, to keeping us full longer, and to really just supporting all the rebuilding and growth that's going on when we partake in strength training. So we do 140 times 1.0, 140 grams per day. 140 times 4 is 560, because each macro has their own respective caloric assignment, or how much 1 gram will cost you. 1 gram of protein is 4 kilocalories. That's how we got that 4 there for the 560 calories. Carbohydrate consideration. So here's the thing. When it comes to carbs and fats, like, it doesn't matter how you shake it. If you got macros and you like eating more peanut butter than you like sweet potatoes, like, obviously you need a certain amount of carbohydrates in your day, but it really doesn't matter. If we're looking at a hierarchy of what's important when it comes to a fat loss phase, I'm going to go calories is king. Second to that is protein. Third to that is eating whole nutrient dense meals, because when we're nutrient deficient, that's when we start craving sweets, we start craving sugars, we're getting more hungry between meals. So this individual tends to enjoy carbs more than fats. Okay, so we're gonna give you 40% of your daily allowance is gonna go to those carbohydrates. All right, so we're gonna take that same maintenance calorie number that we got doing body weight times 14 times 0.4, old school percent to decimals. And that's going to give you 794 calories a day. We divide that by 0.4, and we're going to get 196 grams of carbohydrates per day. That's because, much like protein, or the same as protein, a gram of carbohydrates is 4 kilocalories. All right, moving forward into fat. So before we get into the numbers here on it, you can kind of look at them while I'm talking. Super easy. This is, we've seen this before. Fat timing is going to be the meals furthest away from training. So that is because protein and fat digest very slowly in the body. It's just how their biochemistry makeup is. It's going to take longer to digest those foods rather than carbohydrates. That glycogen, that sugar is going to digest pretty quickly, and it's going to get out into your bloodstreams faster. So if you're somebody that trains in the evening, let's say 6 p.m., your breakfast and lunch is going to be pretty heavy in carbs and fat. In fat and protein. That's because those carbohydrates are going to work very closely with hormones in our body. So if you hear somebody saying like, oh, my blood sugar is messed up, that's because when we eat a carbohydrate heavy meal, we release insulin in the body, and the insulin, kind of tells growth hormone to do its thing, and it tells the pancreas to do its thing. So when that sugar gets high, we're either going to store it or it's going to go to muscles. And so when we work out and we're moving and grooving and we're sweating and doing the damn thing, that insulin helps us, keep that movement and exercise going. So typically it's smartest to have those fats furthest away from your training period, because it just kind of weighs heavy on your stomach, right? Like, the brick, and people say like, oh, I got a brick in my stomach. It's typically a meal fattier, greasier, or something like that. So 30% of the total caloric intake. So 1,960 are maintenance calories times 0.3 percent to decimals gives you 588. 588 times 0.9 equals 65 grams of fat daily. So wait a damn minute. We just said that protein and carbs are 4 kilocalories, right, per 1 gram. Fat is higher. And so that, I think that's why back in the day, fat got like a bad rap, but now fat's good. Fat or carbohydrates, it's neither good nor bad, right? It's all relative to how much we're consuming. So with fat in particular, just know that you typically don't get as much volume, right? So it makes more sense to kind of eat more carbs, because you can get like a cup of blueberries compared to a cup of like canola oil, right? Like you're gonna feel a lot different, because typically fats are like liquids or like peanut butter or something like that. It's just like, you can eat it and you're kind of like, am I full? Did I even eat? Right? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're making your choices for fats, like your avocados, peanut butter, your nuts, your oils, all that good stuff. So to use hand measurements, it's a really good tool if you're somebody that isn't really about tracking, scaling your food yet, or if you are out and about. So a palm is going to be this guy. A cupped hand is going to be this right here. This is a fist, right? And this is the thumb. I think the thumb's the hardest for this, but let's go ahead and hop into it. kind of see those some numbers. So 1 palm, like really, I've done it before. If I do a palm of whatever protein, it's about 3 ounces. So 3 ounces is about 15 to 20 grams. So we're gonna use a big palm here, like a whole palm's worth. It's gonna be like 20 to 30. 30 is on like the male side. Like if you're female and you have a smaller hand like me, typically it's gonna be about 20. So for this person, it'd be about 7 palms worth per day for that protein. Second to that is carbohydrates. So I think this is 10 here. 10 cups, handfuls would be that daily allotment of how much we need? We need about 196 daily. So sweet potatoes, oats, bread, oats again, sweet potatoes, cereal, you know, like all the fun stuff like that. If you look at the supplemental handout, I've got a whole page on what you should get at the store and meal prep ideas and all that good stuff. Fat intake. So fat, like I said, fat's going to be a little bit more difficult to kind of like eyeball. I don't enjoy using this method, but it's just like a good idea. If you're out at a restaurant, don't worry about like, oh, I need some olive oil on the side, because like they're typically cooking with a lot more fats. This is if you are prepping your food yourself. So nuts, maybe you cook with olive oil one meal, and then the next meal you have some peanut butter with an apple. So stuff like that, you know. Typically about a spoonful of peanut butter or a spoonful of oil is typically 1 tablespoon, which is half of a serving, about 16 grams of fat. So a sample day of eating would look something like this. We're going to count this as 2 handfuls here, 2 handfuls at lunch, 2 at dinner, and then protein shake and oatmeal. You can kind of get some protein out of that. A lot of times people are like struggling to get their protein in. So like at lunch, say you're eating a chicken breast that's this size. Okay, I want you to eat a chicken breast that's this size, right? Just increases it at meal times. I think that that's your easiest bang for your buck. And, you know, salt's going to make it easier to eat. Mustard's going to make it easier to eat. If you need to, like, just track your condiments as well. Use that as like a carb or a fat. Primal Kitchens is great for that, or any type of natural ketchup. And there's a ton of great mustards too. So just get funky with it, you know? And it doesn't have to be this, right? If you're tired of chicken breast, let's go ground turkey. If you're tired of ground turkey, let's go chicken sausages, right? So like, don't feel like you need to do the same meals all the time if you're somebody that doesn't like doing the same meals all the time. So with all that being said, you know, check out the Build series. I've got an in-depth look at energy, macros, kind of everything that I talked about here is going to be there. And you should be able to replay this video as well in the Facebook group. So of course, as always, let's connect. Come and say what's up on the gram if you don't already. My email is, it's a mouthful, rachnicely@nicelybuiltfitness.com. And my website is, of course, nicelybuiltfitness.com. If you enjoyed this little mini series, let a girl know. If you have any comments, be sure to drop it down below. I'd love to go live if there's a bunch of them. If you don't feel comfortable asking it in the group, of course, just DM me and I will get back to you. No hesitation. Give me like 24 hours. That's typically what I say. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. I hope you enjoyed it. So on Monday, Nicely Built Performance is kicking off. Nicely Built Performance is going to be my monthly trainer. It's $60 a month. You get your own account on TrueCoach. This is not, a personalized workout. It's basically the workouts that I do, just available for you. You need access to a full gym unless you are doing the at-home option. It's 4 days a week, upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, as well as some cardio options in there should you want to do that with summer coming up. And April challenges. I'm going to comment this too, but if you made it this far, you get a little sneak peek into them. No alcohol, right? So I'm not drinking until April 30th. I stopped March 29th. I think that's when we got back from Austin. So just a month with no alcohol, because I think that a lot of times people think that it's like impossible to, go in these social situations and not drink, go out and not have a drink. I'm a very social drinker. So it's just good to kind of vibe check yourself. Number 2, I'm going to be tracking my protein. I'm going to be tracking my whole intake, but definitely my protein every single day. And number 3, I'm going to get 30 minutes of movement every single day. So I'm going to be dropping more details about this tomorrow. Those are the 3. Wham, bam. Join me on it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. We always need a fun little challenge sometimes to keep ourselves fresh and alive. So guys, have a great freaking evening, and I hope you enjoyed this.